Any noise disturbances you hear in our videos are thanks to Charlie. And Tommy's outside because he's being annoying. Today, we will be looking at the pros and cons of personalized learning.
We will also be talking about copyright and plagiarism in the classroom.
And from there, we can also connect that to open educational tools that are available and some of the issues you can come across when using resources on the internet.
All right, so pros and cons of personalized learnings. Well, there is multiple of those.
How many?
Right now we have 3 of each.
Three pros and 3 cons.
Yeah.
Are they related to each other directly, or are they just this is a pro and then not directly related, this is a con?
Well, I wouldn't say they're necessarily tied in with each other, but they're all about the classroom and how they affect the classroom environment and how it affects the teachers and the students within that environment.
All right, I see. So, what's the first pro we have for personalized learning? Because a lot of people are moving towards that, right?
Yeah.
In BC, the Ministry of Education is moving towards personalized learning. Okay, so what's a pro?
So a pro is that it builds confidence with the students. So personalized learning is more of an individualized instructional method, right? So this can help students gain self-confidence with themselves because the teacher is going to modify and create activities and lessons that are at the student's level, right? So that means that gives the student the opportunity to be successful in those activities that the teacher provides, which allows for the students to see that they are progressing in their learning. And once the teacher notices this, the teacher can actually modify and make the activities more difficult for the student.
So what's a con of personalized learning?
A con is extra preparation that the teacher needs to do in order to make personalized learning successful for the student. So what extra preparation is where it requires the teacher to prepare for the student. But in order for them to prepare an activity or lesson that meets the student's needs, the teacher needs to thoroughly check to see what best skills and activities that would meet the needs of the students. So, for instance, say the student is a visual learner.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps the teacher should create a activity that meets that student's needs as a visual learner. So so providing lots of images provides perhaps more hands-on and just kind of being able to see what they are learning about instead of having them read a book or have the teacher explain something to them. This teacher needs to be able to know how the student best learns in order for them to be most successful in their learning.
Okay. Now, doesn't that mean a lot of work for teachers? Because there's more than one student in each classroom, right?
Yeah.
And some classrooms have ranging from 20 to 30 students. So how do you personalize learning for each individual, and how does the teacher have time for all of that?
Well, it's difficult because what the teacher would do is they would restructure the environment, which is also a negative too, because that affects, students, and especially if they get anxiety easy, they might get flustered and be like, oh no, like what's going on? Why are we changing this?
So that's another con?
That's another con.
You have to change how the classroom structure works.
Right.
To fit the needs of all students.
Right. Okay. But when you restructure that environment, what the teacher would do is he or she would set up the desks in small groups that kind of resemble different students' needs. So say you have a group of visual learners over here.
Okay.
And then you have, say, more hands-on learners over here. And then just auditory learners over here. So you balance the classroom based off how that student learns, making it easier for the student to create activities that kind of meet that one group instead of making it more individual.
Okay. Now, what about if you could have a group of visual learners, but they might not have all the same interests, and a visual learner could have the same interest as an auditory learner, right?
That's true.
So what happens then? So
So
how do you combine those two? Because you've separated them based on how they learn, not based on their interests.
right. So to combine those, what a teacher should do is create the same lesson plan or activity plan for each student, but just modify what that student would learn based off of their personal interests. That way it's more, personal for the student, and it will motivate them more to learn about that, which will help them in the long run because they'll be more successful in the learning. And if they see that they are becoming successful, they'll be like, oh, I can do this. Like, I'm a smart kid, and they're just going to continue to be motivated to learn about other things, and which will, reach success.
Okay, so even though you have to restructure the classroom environment, which is a con,
Yeah.
by giving each student their own personalized learning and focusing on their interests and their needs as an individual. So they're learning about what fascinates them, what pertains and is important to them. And by learning that, they also gain confidence. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
So they
exactly.
gain confidence in what they're learning about. Okay.
Yeah. So you should have students work at their own pace. That's most ideal. And what this does is it allows each individual student to be working on their own assignment while there's other students that are doing their own. So the students then won't be distracting each other.
So now, because students are personalizing their learning and they're basing things on their own interest, how much time do we give them in any given day of classroom time? Do we give them whatever time they need? Are they allowed to go at their own pace? Or because we're trying to fit in so many aspects of the curriculum and to instruct them, are we supposed to allow minimal time, but it's still some time for them to personalize their learning?
What working at your own pace does for students is that it gives the students time who may be struggling with something more time to learn and build to, be able to understand that. And while they are doing that, within the classroom, there are other students who may be, just soaring through the content. They are at their own pace, and they are just working through whatever works for them. Instead of, being held back by a student that is struggling, all students are still benefiting from that student working at their own pace, so that it doesn't slow down the learning of the one who is struggling and the one who is more advanced and understands the activity that the teacher has given.
So nobody is limited by other students, and everybody is able to do the best they're able to do with the best resources and time available.
Yes.
So now, what about teachers that are still following a factory model of education, which we're teaching to all students, and we're not focusing on their personalized and individual needs. We're focusing on the unit as a class. So everybody learns the same thing. We're all learning it this way, and we're not adapting. So now, instead of getting the students to adapt, do we want the teachers now to adapt to this model of personalized learning? And are there any difficulties with that?
We'll see. They see that some teachers may see that as a negative because they feel that they aren't there for what their purpose is to teach the students, kind of following the curriculum and just providing them with different activities to do. So some teachers feel that, with all this kind of, personal learning, the use of technology, that they're not as valuable to the students anymore, and that they don't feel that, if a student is succeeding based off of, personal learning or technology, that perhaps this teachers won't be getting credit for that. So they feel that this kind of personal learning and use of technology is taken away from what they provide to the students.
We will now begin to talk about copyright issues. There are copyright issues with some resources that teachers may find on the internet or students, so it is best to look towards educational websites that provide open source resources without any copyright attachments to them. Whereas if you do use something that is copyrighted within the classroom, whether it's as a teacher or as a student, a teacher and the teacher and the students need to be fully aware of how they're using that resource or item, and if that falls under what they are able to use and do with that resource, so it does not violate copyright issues. When looking at Creative Commons licensing, it is a great tool for educational resources and using within the classroom, as Creative Commons licenses allow people to use something, use a video, use a source, use writing, use an article within whatever their work is, and as long as they give reference to and source that material, then it is usable and viable. It doesn't violate any copyright issues by using directly something of someone else, as long as it's under the Creative Commons licensing. Teachers and students must both be aware of copyright and intellectual property. It is important for teachers to help their students understand intellectual property and ownership, as well as copyright, so that students, when given access to the internet, do not unknowingly take or violate copyright issues with resources that they like to use, that they think are good. Some ways that we can help students avoid plagiarism and copyright issues, as well as teachers, is by something important is that a teacher or student should always give credit of something that isn't their own, someone else's intellectual property or idea or concept or work. They should give full credit and acknowledgement of whatever they use, whether it be a video or an article, just so that other people understand. And this can go beyond using technological resources. It can go into general classroom issues of plagiarism and copying. So instead of one student taking something of another student or teacher or something in a textbook and claiming it as their own, they gain the understanding that it is someone else's work and that credit is due for that person. That they can't just take something as someone else's and make it their own, and make them understand that that is stealing, unless they are given licensing or permission. They're given the license to use that resource or tool by the owner. Going deeper than that, looking at plagiarism specifically, when you are using a tool, whether it be a video or article, as a student, if you see something online that you like, but you don't want to completely copy it, so you make it your own, maybe you change the wording, you put your own spin on what is being said, you still have to give credit to whatever you use, unless what you have done is expanding upon that idea and giving something new and original in your thoughts. And even then, you would still have to give credit for what you're basing off your new ideas from. This was our second video. We think it was a bit better than our last one. It's also quite a bit longer. And
thanks for watching, guys.
Yeah, thanks for watching. Okay, thanks. We don't know how you did it.
Oh, thumbs it up too, by the way.
No, don't do that.